yesterday, what did we learn about? Can someone raise their hand? What did I teach you about yesterday, Kenzie?
We discussed about presidents can have an R.
Presidents can have an R, right? And I also told you that there was 2 presidents' birthdays in February. Does anybody remember the 2 presidents' birthdays that are in February? Connor, quickly, please. Ryder, whose birthdays are in February of the presidents?
Abraham Lincoln and George Washington.
And George Washington. And what number president was George Washington? Raising our hand, Jonathan?
First.
He was the first. Does anybody remember what number Abraham Lincoln was? Lily.
16.
He was the 16th president. So today we're going to learn about George Washington. And tomorrow we're going to learn about, guess who? Abraham Lincoln, right? Lily, last question.
Why in some stories do people say that George Washington has a wig?
You know, some people do say that because, you know, back a long time ago, their hair is different than how it is, our hair is now. And so their hair is just different than how we wore our hair, how we wear our hair now. So sometimes you'll see pictures of him and he has a hat on, and sometimes you'll see him with that hair. That's just how he did his hair because it was a little bit different back when he was alive. So we're going to learn about George Washington today, and we're going to do a Scholastic News. And then later on, we're going to do some writing about George Washington. So who can tell me what these red lettering says? Raising our hand. I think we can all say it together. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday, George!
George Washington was born 283 years ago. At that time, a king ruled our land. No one knew that George would become the first president of the United States one day. So before George Washington, who ruled our land? Raising our hands. Before George Washington, Chelsea, who was it? A king. A king ruled our land before George Washington, right?
That's weird.
Isn't that weird? We didn't have a president before George Washington.
And we don't have a king.
And we don't have kings, right? And I was reading about that because I didn't even really know about that. And actually, we're going to hear about it in our Scholastic News. So we'll figure out more about what happened before George Washington. George, our first president. This is the story of how George Washington became our first president. Who can read this orange title for me? Raising your hand. This orange title. Kenzie.
A king in England.
A king in England. Before we had a president, the king and other people in England made laws for us. They lived all the way across the ocean, but they were still in charge of making our laws. So in England, England's not in the United States, it's across the ocean, it's a different country. And they made laws for us. Who helps make the laws now for us? Who helps make the laws now? Chelsea. The president. So now we have a president who helps make the laws, but before George Washington, before we had presidents, it was the king in England. This says, kings in George's time wore crowns like this one.
Whoa, that's cool.
That's a pretty cool crown, isn't it? All right, who can read this title for me, the purple title? Carson.
Winning the war.
Winning the war. Let's read about it. We wanted to make our own laws. We didn't want England to make our laws anymore. We went to war. George Washington led our army and we won. We named our country the United States of America, but we didn't have a leader. So what did we do? What did we just learn in that? We wanted to make our own laws, so what did we do? Brayden, what did we do? We were like, we don't want England to make our laws anymore. We want to make our own.
War. He just said this.
We went to war, didn't we? We went to war, and who led us to war? Who was the leader?
I thought they said they didn't have them.
We went to war. George Washington led our army.
Oh.
So George Washington led our army, and then did we win or did we lose? Everybody.
They won.
We won, right? So now that we won, what can happen? What happens now that we won that war? We went to that war because we wanted to make our own laws. So now we won. Now what happens, Jocelyn?
Now we need a king. A leader.
We need a president, right? So we didn't have a president at all to help us make our laws because now England is not helping us make our laws, so we need a president. Right here it says, here is George when he led the army. So not only was George a president, but before that he was the leader of the army. Mystic.
This said George Washington led our army, and this says, but we did not have a leader.
Right, because it says we named our new country the United States of America, but we did not have a leader. So after the war, he helped us in the war. He was the leader when we went to war. But after the war, we needed a leader for our country, like a president. We needed a president for our country, and we didn't have a leader. So we didn't have a president. Who can read this blue title for me? Jonathan.
George for president.
George for president. The people in our country loved George. Why do you think they loved George? Why do you think they loved George? Why do you think they loved George so much?
Because he's nice and he's the leader in the world, and
He was the leader of our army, wasn't he? And he helped us win. So they really love George right now. Kenzie.
and because he won fairly in the war.
Right, he won fairly in the war. We were in the war, and he helped America win. And so now we can make our own laws. So the people loved George. He was fair, brave, and honest. George became our what number president? First president. He was president for 8 years. Then the people voted for a new president. So how many years was George Washington president for? Raising your hand. How many years was he president for, Ivan?
8.
He was president for 8 years, right? This says we vote for president. Presidents are different from kings. A king can be the leader for life, but our presidents can only be presidents for up to 8 years. People do not get to choose who is king. Do we get to choose who's president? Do the people vote?
Yes.
Yeah, we get to vote and choose who's president, but they don't ever get to choose who the king is. People do get to choose who is president. We vote for a president every 4 years.
I thought we.
Okay, so this is how it is. A president can be the president for 8 years, but every 4 years, they have to rerun for president. So if everybody likes them, they can be president for 4 more years. But if they like somebody else who's running against the president, then that new guy can be president. So every 4 years we have to vote, but they can be president for up to 8 years. Does that make sense? Yeah,
I thought
Kenzie.
George Washington was the second president.
He was the first, Kenzie.
Then how do you know who's going to be king?
You know, we don't have kings in the United States, do we?
Like when there was.
But they do in England. And in England, you knew who was king because it was like the dad would be king. And then when the dad passed away, his son would be king. So it was within the family. They didn't get to choose. It's within the family on who gets to be the next king.
And what if you don't have another son after?
If you don't have another son, then it could be like your brother or your cousin, or it's somebody within the family.
What if you don't have a cousin? What if there wasn't any more boys?
There are gonna be some boys somewhere down the line that you're related to.
What if there's nobody in the family?
There will be. It's just always worked out that way where there is. So we learned on this page that George Washington was our first president, and he led the
Army.
He led the army in the war. And why did we go to war? Can we remember? This is kind of a hard question. Why did we go to war, Lily?
Because we wanted to make the law.
We wanted to make our own laws. Who was making our laws before we went to war? Jocelyn.
The king.
The king. Where was the king from, Brayden?
Did they fight against the U.S. Army? Jenna? Who did they fight against?
The war was between the United States and England. Because England were the people that were making our laws. And we wanted to make our laws. So we had a war against the United States and England. Because the king lived in England. Kenzie.
Who was the second president? Abraham.
What number was Abraham Lincoln?
16.
16th. I am not 100% positive, Kenzie, so I'm going to have to look that up, and then I'll let you know, okay? Because we've had so many presidents. Raising our hand, who knows who the President of the United States is right now? Right now, who's our president? Writer.
President Obama.
President Obama. Does anybody know his first name? Sasha.
Barack.
Barack Obama. He's our president right now, but you know what? This year we're going to be voting for a new president because he's been president for 8 years.
18,000.
So we are going to get a brand new president soon.
Who?
Guess who's on the back page?
George Washington.
Yes.
George Washington.
Abraham Lincoln.
His money. He's a dollar. That's him.
If you look at this picture, Abraham Lincoln is on what 2 pieces of money? Raising our hand. Who can tell me one? Carson.
Penny.
He's on the penny. He's also on health.
$8.
Try again. What is that?
$5.
A $5 bill. Abraham Lincoln. We're going to learn more about him tomorrow.
And Carson has 99 of his
He
coins
does.
stuck on his folder.
Carson he can show us the 100 pennies that he
No,
has.
he has 99 because
Because one fell off, right? So we have 99 pennies. You know, we might be able to find one for you to make 100. Okay, let's read about Abraham Lincoln. Mystic?
I have one on the spot.
Yes.
I have 900 in my opinion.
Are my first graders ready to learn about Abraham Lincoln?
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Abraham Lincoln was another great president. He was what number president? Everybody together. 16. He was the 16th president of our country. Abe was born in a log cabin. Has anybody ever heard of the toys Lincoln Logs?
Yeah, I have them.
A lot of you might have those at home.
I have those toys.
Great. You know what? Lincoln Logs were named after Abraham Lincoln because he was born in a log cabin.
What about our school?
What about our...
Yeah, Lincoln was named after him too.
You're right. Our school was named after Abraham Lincoln. I didn't even think of that.
Every single school is named after him.
So that is pretty cool. Our school is named after Abraham Lincoln and Lincoln Logs. Why are Lincoln Logs named after Abraham Lincoln? Jocelyn? Why were Lincoln Logs named after him? Hudson?
Because it says Lincoln.
Because it says Lincoln, and what else does it represent? Lizzie?
He's a log. Born in a cabin.
He was born in a log cabin, so he was born in a house like made out of logs, made out of wood. Okay, Abe was born in a log cabin. He loved to read and learn, just like us. One of his favorite books was about George Washington. Abe became a great president when he grew up. We remember him and George on President's Day. So we focus on George Washington and Abraham Lincoln on President's Day. I told you guys this yesterday. Who remembers why? Why do we focus on Abraham Lincoln and George Washington? Kenzie, do you remember?
Because their birthdays are both in February.
Their birthdays are both in February, right?
That means they're pretty much kind of the same age.
And we celebrate President's Day on what Monday? Is it the first Monday?
Third.
It's the third Monday. The third Monday. Okay, I need some friends that are going to help me out answer these questions about on the back page. Who was the first president? George Washington or Abraham Lincoln? Who can come up and help me? Ivan. George Washington or Abraham Lincoln? Who was the first president?
George Washington.
George Washington.
Sasha, straight up. You did it right, Sasha.
Thank you, Ivan. Our next one says, where's one place you can see Abe's face? On a penny, on a $1 bill, or on a dime? Lizzie, where can you see it? On a penny. Who, raising their hand, where else can we see Abraham Lincoln's face? On what other type of money? Hudson.
A $5 bill.
Yeah. On a $5 bill, right? So he's everywhere.
Except on a dime. Or on a shirt. Or even not on a bill. Or he's not
Does
on
anybody
a
know what George Washington is on?
He's not on a social.
He's on a piece of money. Braden? What is he on?
I forgot which one was on the $100 bill. I don't know. I don't. Yeah.
George Washington.
George Washington. He was on
What
a
is he on?
$100 bill. 100.
Benjamin Franklin
Ben.
is
So
on
that means he has $100.
is on the $100 bill. George Washington, he's on the quarter,
Yes.
and he might be on the dollar bill too. I'll have to
Yes,
check
he
that out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So it's pretty cool. Okay, what would be the best title for the article on this page? Would it be George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, or a log cabin? Raising your hand. Who thinks they know what would be the best title for this page, Emerson? What would it be? What would it be? This one right here. What would be the best title for the article on this page? George Washington, a log cabin, or Abraham Lincoln? What does this talk about? Abraham Lincoln, doesn't it? Who knows what Abraham is also called? They shorten his first name.
Abe.
Abe, right? So we can call him Abe or Abraham. All right, read about Abe again. In which one of these homes was he born? Who can come circle the home that he was born in? Hudson? He was born in the log cabin, wasn't he? You know what? Today I do. Who can raise their hand? When I do Scholastic News, do I ever let you guys do partners? No, I never do. But you know what? I'm really proud of you guys today, and I think you guys can work in partners today. I think you guys can work in partners today. I'll pick your partners for you. Raising your hand. What are we supposed to be doing during Scholastic News? What are some of our duties? Reading. Wonderful. Emerson. Yeah, read your word wall words, highlight your word wall words. Ivan, what else are we doing? Well, you know, we can use our whisper voices today because we're going to be working with partners. But just because we're working with partners, we're not going to be loud and crazy. Jocelyn.
We're not going to be loud like this.
Right, we're going to whisper. Can everybody try to whisper to the person next to you? Okay, that was wonderful. Now I'm going to be picking partners. Let's go with Hayden and Jenna. And we'll do Hudson and Elizabeth. And Mystic and Kenzie. And Connor and Lily.
I'm a Lily too.
And Angel and Sasha.
We should go this way.
Jonathan and Carson. And Emerson and Lizzie. And Ryder and Jocelyn. And Julie. And Chelsea. And Brayden and Ivan.